Well, it's one thing for Germany, or rather for German politicians, to say they can go green without torpedoing the ship of state. It's another for the world's biggest polluter, China, to claim it can continue to boom without continuing to poison the planet. Yet China's leaders seem to have had a change of heart when it comes to climate change. Justin Rowlett, who spent a year trying to live a more environmentally friendly life as our ethical man, wonders whether the Chinese High Command can be believed.
Riding a bicycle in Beijing isn't what it used to be. 3 decades of unbroken economic growth have transformed an agricultural backwater into the world's paramount industrial power. But this extraordinary growth has come at a price: pollution. China has become the biggest emitter of carbon dioxide on the planet. And I've got something of a personal interest in China's CO2 emissions. Because 5 years ago, my family and I were ordered by my bosses at the BBC to undertake an extraordinary experiment. We were told to spend an entire year doing everything we could to try and cut our carbon emissions. I became the BBC's ethical man. We changed the way we heat and power our home, and we got rid of the car. It was difficult at first.
Stop it, Justin!
But we got used to it. We stopped flying and took the train instead. But whatever we did, people said the same thing. Don't bother, because China's emissions are rising so quickly. But now China says it's going to change. I've come to Tiananmen Square for the biggest event in the Chinese political calendar, the National People's Congress. Delegates from across the country come to Beijing, many decked out in their traditional costumes. And they've come here to the Great Hall of the People to approve the government's plan for this entire country's economy for the next 5 years. This is, of course, political theatre. The plan will be approved. Nevertheless, this is an important event. This is when China's leaders make their priorities public. But this year, there is a surprise in store.
要坚持把改善人民生活
What he's saying is that promoting prosperity remains at the heart of China's plans for the next 5 years. And he says that future growth must be sustainable. So he's talked about cutting pollution, conserving resources, protecting the environment. This is undoubtedly the greenest 5-year plan in China's history.
Not the sort of thing you'd expect to hear from the Chinese premier. But according to one of the country's leading economists and an architect of the new 5-year plan, China knows it has got to change.
When China's leader Deng Xiaoping was reforming the economy 30 years ago, he said it doesn't matter what colour the cat is, so long as it catches mice. But China is becoming a black cat. It is the world's biggest energy producer, the second biggest energy consumer, and the biggest emitter of CO2. China is the biggest victim of this pollution. So the big challenge for China is to change from being the world's biggest black cat to the world's biggest green cat.
Professor Hu Angang says China aims to be nothing less than the world's first green superpower.
China should not just participate in the global green revolution, China needs to lead the revolution.
The only problem is the Chinese government has another concern that takes priority. These are the remains of a wall even more ancient than the Great Wall of China. And one thing has remained a constant in the 3 millennia since this wall was built, and that is the enduring poverty of people in rural China. China's leaders know that they need to continue to improve living standards across the country if they are to hold on to power. So the key question is whether it's possible to do that and to cut carbon dioxide. Hundreds of millions of people in China struggle just to make enough money to survive. They've left villages to work in China's vast, energy-intensive manufacturing sector, making goods, most of which are exported abroad. But there are ways in which places like rural China can be lifted out of poverty without damaging the environment, one of which involves these things. It involves pigs. Oh. Now the key to this process is, how shall I put it, is pig waste. And I've got a bit of experience with pig waste. Oh.
First day on the job!
The farmer, Mr. Ren, has got me mucking out his pigs. It's a new venture for him. Before this, he just grew crops. So this stuff, this is pretty much like human poo. And they collect it all in a big chamber underneath the pen. And when it rots down, they collect the methane gas. That's how it works. Oh. Oh. It's not very nice work, is it? Oh. Thank you very much indeed. Cheers, Mr. Ren. And so the gas comes down through this pipe and down to the stove. Look at that. Good, clean gas. Mr. Ren also gets to sell the pigs, and because he isn't burning coal anymore, he's cut his carbon emissions, and that is worth money too. Carbon credits can be sold on the world carbon market. In fact, the income Mr. Ren gets by cutting his carbon dioxide emissions helps pay off the loan he took to build the pen. Now he earns as much as his son, who works in a factory. The Chinese government has supported low-carbon projects in many villages in China, but by Chinese standards, these projects are small beer. China already has the world's largest market for these things, for electric bikes. Whoop, whoop. And is a world leader in solar power. 7 of the world's top 10 solar companies are Chinese. Last year, China overtook America to become the world's biggest generator of wind energy. It's been installing a new wind turbine every hour. In short, green technology is already big business in China. These are effectively the biggest solar panels in the world. They form the entire outer wall of the headquarters of the world's leading solar panel manufacturer, Suntech. Look at this place. Suntech was started just 10 years ago and is already worth $2 billion. It makes me realise, when I was forced to be ethical man, perhaps I should have thought on a bigger scale. What do you put your success down to?
I designed, the best production line, in the world at that time, and also, we design, very reliable and high-performing product.
And like China's other manufacturing businesses, he also benefits from low labour costs. But if incomes are going to rise, as China's leaders hope, then just making things very cheaply won't be enough. It will have to develop genuinely new products. 5% of Suntech's total revenue goes on research and development, but most of it is spent outside China. But the weight of your innovation comes from abroad, doesn't it? 3 of your 4 big centres for innovation are outside of China.
Yes.
If China really is going to lead the world in green technology, it needs to learn to innovate. These toilets, right in the shadow of the Imperial Palace, are pretty innovative. They don't use any water. They use the fluids they receive to clear the bowl. Now, the company that's backed these says this is an original idea, but dig a little bit deeper and you discover that the first waterless toilets were developed in Canada. But according to a leading academic, China is missing something. To come up with new low-carbon products, it needs to be more deviant. Professor P is a professor of deviance. So, Professor P, what is a professor of deviance? What do you study?
Deviance is about breaking rules, but traditional Chinese society emphasizes rules. There is relatively little space for innovation. This is actually an incredibly important issue. For our economic development, we need innovation. But our traditional culture and our political structure absolutely don't encourage innovation. If this system doesn't reform, then our economy will not break through the next barrier.
Though there are increasing numbers of people within Chinese society who are breaking the rules. Aggie was a pop singer, but she gave up her singing career to become a full-time vegan campaigner.
For the people in the West, it's easier to give them information because you can do a lot of things. You don't have a lot of restrictions. In China, it's like it's more difficult to give them the information, and they have less access to this information.
Officials have repeatedly refused Aggie permission to hold vegan campaigning events. Independent campaigning is not allowed in China. Gagging the revolutionaries seems an unusual way to lead a revolution. And the truth is, people who go against the grain like Aggie are still the exception in China. China's government has already unleashed a different kind of revolution, a consumer revolution, and is encouraging people to pursue the kinds of freedoms that Jason Yi enjoys. Jason's taking me for a spin around his dad's Formula 3 track in Beijing. He is only 15. Don't worry about me though, Jason's been driving since he was 8. So Jason, would you ever consider getting rid of your petrol car and getting an electric car?
I will if they ban them, but
they'd have to ban them first.
Yeah, because I love my car a lot.
Jason's dad is, as you might have guessed, one of that new social class in China, the super rich. This isn't consistent. The government's now talking about green growth, about sustainable growth. This vast car industry is not consistent with sustainable green growth, is it?
Yeah, it's contradictory, but the GDP is still so important to China. The 8% of GDP growth per year is a top priority to maintain the stabilities and the harmonies.
China may sincerely want to be a green rather than a black cat, but it isn't actually proposing to cut its emissions. Its targets are about making industry more carbon and energy efficient. And if you look at China's forecasts, you see that despite the new targets, experts like Professor Hu Angang estimate that emissions are set to double before they finally begin to fall away after 2030. China may aim to be the world's first green superpower, but it expects to burn a lot of coal before it gets there.